Okay, we're live. Good evening. This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and I'm here with Attorney
Sohela Omrani.
Miss Omar. And I work together in the area of family law and divorce, child custody, child visitation, spousal support, child support, all those fun topics that we cover in divorce cases or family law cases. So, Helia, tonight I'd like to talk about custody and visitation. Most of the calls that we get, they concern custody and visitation. What, before we start that, tell me the craziest, the wildest custody and visitation case that you've ever worked on.
Oh my God. I have plenty. Now I got to sit down and think which one was the craziest. I think the craziest I had was a married couple trying to fight over custody of their child, and suddenly somebody else comes in and says, I'm the father. So I had two father and a mother. So that was the craziest. And we had to go through DNA testing. And this child, actually, unbeknownst to actual parent, was visiting the other so-called father indirectly and without knowing.
With the other dad not knowing about it?
Nope.
What eventually happened in that case?
Well, we went through the DNA testing. The child was about 4 years old, I would say, about 4. DNA testing, the second father was not the father, but the court allowed visitation because the kid was so used to him.
You know how many years ago that was?
15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it probably was before, the new statute that says you can have presumed parents, more than 2 parents in a case, right?
Probably, yes, because that's the decision on that was a little crazy.
Right. Have you looked at Family Code 7611 about presumed parentage?
I don't remember. No, what does it say?
Well, basically that you can have more than 2 parents. A child can have more than 2 parents. They can have the bio, parents, and then they can have something called a presumed parent. In California law, depending on what area of law you are, working in, there are about 5 or 6 different types of parents in California law. And the analysis on, what type of parent you are, usually the father, gets kind of complicated. I know an attorney out in the West Side in Century City. The only thing he does is paternity actions, establishing paternity. He doesn't do divorce. He doesn't do support. He doesn't do divisions of assets, but he's an expert on paternity and establishing or defending against claims of paternity. It comes up much more than I would have ever thought. I remember several years ago, I was at a seminar and, I talked to him at the break. And I said, look, are there that many people challenging paternity or wanting paternity when they're not the bio mother or father? He said, Mr. Davis, you wouldn't believe. He said, I get hundreds of calls every month. Every month.
Wow.
Well, I get, we have, 10 million people in the county. So I guess that's not a lot of calls. If he's getting 100 calls a month, that's 1,200 a year. That's really not a lot. But, and people keep having kids. So he was more than busy. He even told me, that some of the cases he turns away because he just doesn't have time. But he's an expert in it. And I always fashioned myself an expert in paternity, but I was nowhere near this guy.
Are we talking about the attorney that overturned the case on 1% possibility?
I think that was his case. I'm not
Yes,
sure, but I think that was his case.
yes. I think I know who you're talking about. Yes, he's very busy and he's very, very good.
And all he does is paternity,
Yes,
establishing and defending against paternity.
yes,
You
yes.
you talk about a niche practice. That's a niche practice. I met a guy one time that only does support collection. He won't get you support. He won't do a divorce. He won't do custody and valuation. You come to him, you must have a support order or judgment that's not being paid, and it must be over a certain amount. Um, I don't know if the amount was 5,000 or 10,000. Like, if it's only a couple thousand, he won't deal with it, right?
Mm.
But if you meet his criteria, that's all he does.
Wow.
And the interesting thing was when I first met him, he was just doing cases in Los Angeles County. Then it spread out to, California. And then it started spreading to other states.
Oh, wow.
And, he enlisted attorneys in other states to help him. I don't know if you know this or have any idea, but do you know the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that have support orders that have never been paid?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. In fact, we got plenty of them ourselves.
I have a very good friend. Uh, she was married to a gentleman and they had a child. And, at about 2 or 3 or 4, they got divorced. And she got a support order, a child support order. And the child support order was like for, $300 a month. The guy never paid it. And, I was mentioning to her one time, I said, you got a judgment, you might want to collect on it. And of course, with the interest and time, the amount was astronomical.
Right.
And she said, no, I don't, I don't want to cause him any harm or heartache. And, I'll just let it slide. But, there are hundreds of thousands of people all over this country that have these orders that get every day. The family law courts all over the country, they issue these orders every day, new ones every day. And a lot of them aren't collectible, aren't collectible. We have that case out in Pomona, right? Where the guy who owes the money, you know, brought a case for support against our client, right? Because they changed custody by stipulation, they agreed to it. And he had the nerve to come to court and ask for child support against our client when he was, thousands of dollars in arrears to her. And then he's trying to he's coming up with some, ideas, quote unquote, on how he can, skirt that issue. I don't know if I ever told you this. I know you're working on the case, but I worked on that case originally when they first got divorced. And he always had some harebrained idea or strategy, to defeat the mom in court. And every time he came up with this, or his attorney came up with it. I don't think the attorney came up with these ideas because I knew the attorneys and they were really smart attorneys. But I think he was coming up with these ideas and, insisting that they implement them. And they were loser ideas. I mean, he asked for a 730 and the 730 evaluator slammed him. He wanted custody and 730 evaluator said, no, are you crazy? You're basically the idiot in this whole situation.